As a student, have you ever wondered why economics as a subject has got several definitions and all of which seem to be valid? Join me in this presentation to understand this phenomenon, as you'll be equipped with the knowledge and understanding of why and how this came about. Don't also forget that you'll have a wonderful opportunity of mastering the three major economics definitions by proponents, as we shall be analyzing the strengths and limitations of each. Get a better understanding of the subject right from the beginning. See you around. So very welcome to the Economics Clinic for A-Level, your number and page for all your academic needs as a student. In this presentation, we shall be preoccupying ourselves mostly with the understanding of the major economics definitions. And teacher Kiria Aaron, he's your host. So let us start by setting the agenda of our presentation. Our primary focus will be on understanding the three major economics definitions by proponents. And to start with, we shall look at the wealthy-oriented definition of economics according to Adam Smith. And secondly, we shall look at the welfare-oriented definition given by an English economist known as Alfred Marshall. And lastly, we shall look at the scarcity-oriented definition according to Lord Rhino Robbins. So let us start by looking at Adam Smith's wealthy-oriented definition of economics. Now, Adam Smith is one of the most celebrated economists that the world has ever produced, and this is because of his remarkable contributions to the discipline of economics. Adam Smith was a Scottish philosopher and the father of modern economics, and in his detailed dissertation, which was titled The Wealth of Nations and later published as a book in around 1776, which most people refer to as the Economics Bible, Adam Smith defined economics as a science of wealth which studies the process of production, consumption, and accumulation of wealth. In other words, the object of primary importance of economics, according to Adam Smith, is to increase riches and the power of a country. And this understanding is deeply rooted in the mercantilist definition of political economy, which is the study of wealth. Now, this narrative alone may not be sufficient enough for us to fully understand Adam Smith's definition of economics, especially when it comes to questions like why and how was it wealth oriented. And in that regard, I recommend that you please visit our previous video in which we discussed thoroughly well how economics evolved by definitions over the years, starting from the Greek philosophers through the European mercantilists up to the modern economists like Adam Smith. And in that case, you'll be in position to gain a deep understanding, especially the background setting, which influenced Adam Smith's intellectual perspective. And you'll also be in position to realize that in as much as Adam Smith resonated with the mercantilist definition of economics, which is the study of wealth, Adam Smith never believed in the principles of mercantilism. Please check out that video if you can in order to understand Adam Smith's intellectual fight against mercantilism as an economic theory. And with that, we can move on to the strength of Adam Smith's definition of economics. And the first strength is that, according to Adam Smith, wealth are the goods and services that command value in exchange in an economy. Unlike mercantilism, which believed that countries can become wealthy only if they accumulated more stock of precious metal, which included silver and gold mainly, and also such countries that promote exports and reduce on imports, meaning that they had to use very heavy tariffs. Just as we saw an example of Britain in our previous video, as she imposed the Sugar Act of 1764 as well as the Navigation Act of 1651, in which she boosted her exports and reduced on her imports, thereby enabling her experience favorable balance of trade. And all this was due to the influence of mercantilism, which was an economic theory dominant in Europe between the 16th century up to the 18th century. This happens to be the first strong point in Adam Smith's definition of economics. The second strong point of Adam Smith's definition is that many other contemporary scholars like Nassau Williams Sr. and John Stuart Mill equally urged that economics is a science of production and distribution of wealth, an understanding which resonates with Adam Smith's definition of economics, which we cited earlier as a science of wealth which studies the process of production, consumption, and accumulation of wealth. And this happens to be the second strong point of Adam Smith's definition of economics. So with this, we can briefly look at some of the limitations of Adam Smith's definition of economics. And the first one is that Adam Smith ignored the central focus of economics, which is scarcity and choice. Now, the fundamental economic problem faced by every individual society is scarcity, and this makes choice inevitable. And therefore, Adam Smith ignoring this essential and important aspect of economics was a big mistake, because without scarcity, economics as a subject has no foundation. The second limitation of Adam Smith's definition is that it is too narrow, as it does not consider the major problems faced by a society or an individual. And this is because Adam Smith's primary assumption is that an economic man is preoccupied with wealth hunting, a notion which most of his critics look at and choose to denote the subject as a bread and butter science. And the last limitation limitation of Adam Smith's definition is that he only emphasized the material aspect of human life, which is generation of wealth. Now, this simply means that economics as a subject only taught selfishness and love for money, as it ignored the non-material aspect of human life, which includes things like morals and values, education, health, as well as security, which are part and parcel of every human society. And therefore, with all these limitations, Adam Smith's definition cannot be sufficient enough to fully explain the subject matter of economics, as it ignored the fundamental economics principle. Its scope and coverage was very narrow, and also Adam Smith failed to establish the relationship between wealth and human welfare, which is the major reason why Alfred Marshall came up with the welfare-oriented definition of economics, as to cover the gaps which were created by Adam Smith's definition of economics. So let us take a quick look at Alfred Marshall's welfare-oriented definition of economics and get to understand what he meant precisely in his definition, as welfare being the object of primary importance of economics, unlike Adam Smith, who believed that the object of primary importance of economics was wealth. So let us take a critical look at Alfred Marshall's welfare-oriented definition so as to understand his perspective about economics as well. Now, Alfred Marshall was an English economist, and in his book, which was titled Principles of Economics, which was published in around 1890, Alfred Marshall defined economics as the study of mankind in the ordinary business of life. This means that economics is on the one side the study of wealth, and on the other side is the study of man or human welfare, which is very important. In his analysis, Alfred Marshall puts wealth and human welfare into perspective, helping us to understand that wealth is supposed to impact human welfare, meaning that wealth is supposed to be used as a means in order to achieve an end, which is human welfare. In the ultimate analysis, welfare is the object of primary importance of economics. That's according to Alfred Marshall's perspective about economics. So let us take a quick look at some of the strengths and limitations of Alfred Marshall's definition of economics, and following are the strengths. The first one is that according to Alfred Marshall's definition, economics is a social science since it studies the actions of human beings. And the second strength is that economics studies the ordinary business of life. The third strength of Alfred Marshall's definition of economics is that human welfare is the object of primary importance in economics, just as we cited earlier on that wealth should be used as a means to achieve an end, which is human welfare. And that's why we are saying that it's the object of primary importance according to the definition of Alfred Marshall. And the last strength is that economics studies the material part of human welfare, which is measurable in terms of the measuring rod of man. And with that, we come to the limitations of Alfred Marshall's definition of economics. But it's important to note that most of these limitations were highlighted by Rain Robbins, who happens to be the major critic of Alfred Marshall's definition. So to start with, Rain Robbins argued that Alfred Marshall's definition ignores the fundamental principle of scarcity, which is the same mistake which Adam Smith also made. The second limitation is that Rain Robbins argued that Alfred Marshall's definition did not establish the relationship between economic activities and human welfare, and this is because some economic activities are considered as positive since they promote human welfare, meanwhile some other economic activities are considered as negative. They are detrimental to human welfare. Talk about the manufacturing of firearms and ammunition. This promotes warfare, which leads to loss of lives and property. And similarly, other economic activities such as dealing in drugs and narcotics, prostitution. Such economic activities have got a direct negative impact on the physical, mental, morals and values of an individual, which negatively affects the general welfare of a society. And therefore, Alfred Marshall failing to establish a relationship between such economic activities and human welfare was a big mistake. The third limitation is that Rain Robbins also argued that Alfred Marshall limited economics to a normative science, and yet it is also a positive science since economics prescribes policies, theories and models. And the fourth limitation is that Rain Robbins argued that Marshall talked about human welfare and he failed to show how it is measured, meaning that his definition wasn't scientific. And the last limitation is that Rain Robbins argued that Marshall's definition ignored the non-material aspect of life, which includes things like morals and values, education, health, as well as security, which are part and parcel of every human society. And therefore, with all these limitations, Alfred Marshall's definition is not sufficient enough to fully explain the subject matter of economics, and this is why Rain Robbins came up with the scarcity-oriented definition of economics so as to cover the gaps which were created by Alfred Marshall's definition. So let us take a quick look at Rain Robbins' scarcity-oriented definition of economics. Now, Rain Robbins, in his landmark essay which was titled The Nature and Significance of Economic Science, defined economics as a science that studies human behavior as a relationship between ends and scarce means which have alternative uses. And frankly speaking, this is the popularly accepted definition of economics because its primary focus is on scarcity, which is the subject matter of economics. So with this, we need to take a quick look at some of the strengths of Rain Robin's definition and understand why it's actually considered the most popularly accepted definition of economics. The first strength is that the means or resources to satisfy wants are scarce in relation to their demand. This is valid in a sense that resources around us are limited in nature. Talk about land and capital. We have to use them sparingly simply because their demand exceeds their supply, and so their usage has to be economized. The second strength is that human wants or needs are unlimited, meaning that they are recurrent in nature. As we satisfy need A, need B crops up, so that makes them infinite in nature. The third strength is that throughout the ages, man is in constant effort to utilize the scarce resources so as to satisfy the unlimited wants. Speaking about land as a scarce resource, man has always put it to alternative uses throughout the ages. Land has always been used for farming, settlement, and business, and this is what Rain Robins means when he talks about the means which have alternative uses, precisely in his definition. So this brings us to the end of the strength of Rain Robins' definition, which is the widely accepted definition of economics. However, that doesn't mean that it has no limitations at all. We shall take a quick look at some of the limitations which can be found or highlighted in the widely accepted definition of economics according to Rain Robins. The first limitation is that Robins made economics neutral between ends, as he did not explain the positive and the normative statements of economics. And the second limitation is that he limited the scope of the subject to microeconomic theory, and yet economics as a subject studies the broad aggregates such as inflation, unemployment, national income, public finance, as well as other aggregates which affect the economy as a whole. And the last limitation is that Robins asserted that the root cause of all economic problems is scarcity of resources without having any human touch, and therefore disintegrating human welfare from economics was a grave mistake which Robins made. And so with all these limitations, we come to the end of the major economics definitions given by proponents. However, it will be very satisfying for a student to understand the general definition of economics, the one which harmonizes the controversy which is caused by the different proponents of economics. That's what we always refer to as the general definition of economics. So let us take a quick look at the general definition of economics, which can try to harmonize the controversies caused by the different proponents of economics. The general definition of economics is given as a science that studies how man utilizes the scarce resources so as to satisfy his or her unlimited needs and wants. And this definition claims no originality but puts scarcity as the central focus of economics. And since the concept of scarcity was thoroughly analyzed by Rain Robins in his definition of economics, we note that his scarcity-oriented definition of economics is the most appropriate currently. And in conclusion, we need to note that the controversy relating to the definitions of economics remain and will remain so in the future, as it is very difficult to spell out a logically concise definition simply because of modern research, which creates new areas of economics to be explored. We come to the last segment of our presentation, which is evaluation, and understand that this is not every student's cup of tea. However, it's important to always ascertain our level of understanding of an academic content covered. So in this evaluation, we shall look at basically two objective questions which will assess our level of understanding of the three major economics definitions by proponents which we've just looked at. And the first question is, which of the following statement is false about Rain Robins' definition of economics? A. The resources or means to satisfy wants are scarce in relation to their demand. B. Human welfare is the object of primary importance in economics. And C. Human wants and needs are unlimited. And D. Man is in constant effort to utilize scarce resources so as to satisfy the unlimited needs and wants. Now just pause the video, take your time and go through all those options. When you get the right option, write it down and then compare with our answer. So when you look at all these options, the right answer is of course B. Human welfare is the object of primary importance in economics, which is the false statement about Rain Robins' definition. Remember, as we talked about Alfred Marshall's definition, we said it's welfare oriented, and according to him, that's where we get this option, that the object of primary importance in economics is actually human welfare, and that's why we are saying that's wrong according to Rain Robins' definition of economics. And the second question is actually, which of the following definitions fundamentally explains the subject matter of economics? A. Economics refers to the study of mankind in the ordinary business of life. And B. Economics refers to a science of wealth which studies the process of production, consumption, and accumulation of wealth. C. Economics refers to a science that studies human behavior as a relationship between ends and scarce means which have alternative uses. And lastly, D. Economics refers to a science of production and distribution of wealth. So just as you did in question 1. It's the same thing you need to do. Just pause the video, take your time and get the right answer, then compare with ours just right after playing the video. So according to question 2, the right answer is of course C. Economics refers to a science that studies human behavior as a relationship between ends and scarce means which have alternative uses. That's the scarcity-oriented definition of economics given by Rainer Robbins, which we said is the widely accepted definition of economics. And this brings us to the end of our presentation. So thank you very much for following. I hope you gained something. Let's catch up in our next presentation. But before we go, I need to make a honorable mention of each and everyone who has subscribed for and liked us on all our socials. As a team, we appreciate it and say thank you. Please stay safe and God bless you. Yalla bye.